Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
So yeah, it's called being in the shit, where you are, you bomb on stage, you're stuck there, deer in the headlights. What do you do?
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Louis Critchley. Louis, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello,
There we go.
lovely to be here. My name is Louis Critchley. I'm a hello, everything all right?
Yeah, it's working.
Oh,
It's
okay.
interesting. Got an interesting
Lovely,
delay.
lovely. So, oh God, no, oh that's terrible. In is it just Wi-Fi?
I don't
Um,
know, but we just keep going. We'll see what happens.
we'll manage. Yeah, my name is Louis Critchley. I'm a voice actor. I specialize mainly in creature voice and mocap. And yeah, I just I love to have a little laugh, and I love to mainly do stuff for video games and various projects.
Very cool. When you say creature, you're talking about like monsters?
Oh yes, oh yeah.
Okay.
I do. So I like to kind of. I consider myself sort of almost like a Swiss Army knife of different animals and mythical beasts and creatures. Because there's been a bit of a push in the industry nowadays for more creature work to be included, more real, authentic voices to be used.
Hmm. So these are like hybrid human animal creatures, is right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, also just sometimes straight up animals. Any kind that you could think of, any that you could
Okay.
imagine. I will try anything.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you ready to get started, Louis? Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comment section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right. All right. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any
Mhm.
person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any joke. So Louis, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
I don't know if there's necessarily a start or an end point to this. I think that, um, while yes, I think I think everyone who sort of grows up to be a comedian has an inherent love of telling jokes and giving laughter. I think that to necessarily put a label on it and to say that I am a comic and I'm therefore going to tell this style of humor or I'm going to be this kind of comedian. Ultimately, I think kind of gets in the way of just expressing yourself for who you are and the art form you want to pursue.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds like you're ready for the first question. So that's about the
Mm.
role of persona in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus the real self?
Hmm. I mean, I think that there is a certain level of satisfaction and joy that you can get as an audience member watching someone put on a persona, seeing someone potentially like push boundaries that couldn't be pushed in seriousness, but when it's under the guise of you know being able to be a character in that scene, you can project those potentially like those concerns about something going too far onto it just being it's part of a persona. But I also do believe it's a bit of a double-edged sword because I think that if there is all persona, there is no authenticity. And if there's no authenticity, I don't think there's any point of connection for the audience.
Hmm. So then I guess this question might be weird. So then does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
Hmm. Well, that's a good one. That I think that inherently there always needs to be a nugget of truth in comedy, in performance, in any form of conversation or acting, because if you lose that authenticity, then you're not actually connecting, you're reciting, you're giving a listed off group of words that happen to be strung together in a certain way. But if there's nothing behind the eyes, if there's nothing that is saying, I am a person that is trying to connect with you right now, then I don't feel anything. I can't laugh at that because I don't believe it.
So that's a point. So I am using, I
Mm.
am kind of fitting in that role at this very moment, making sure I got the same questions here, but still
Mm.
working with the second part. So, all right, how about punching up versus punching down? So where do
Okay.
comics versus comedians stand on this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first
Hmm.
comedian by killing the court jester?
Hmm. It's interesting. I think there's a really, really fine line here because I there's such a danger of becoming mean-spirited and sounding like you are just, making fun of an audience member, a specific person, a specific group. And so I mean personally, I avoid making jokes like that. I think that I'm perhaps it's because I don't trust my own instincts enough yet, and that's something I can work towards. But I think that it's a really slippery slope. And I find generally that making yourself the butt of a joke, if you punch down on yourself, then that kind of almost steals the thunder of any potential, tension that could happen because you're basically making fun of yourself first, and then if you are the lowest person on the ladder, there is no way that anyone could possibly feel inadequate or less than you. So I'd say that's how I put it.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you're trying to relate with the audience. You're not, you're putting yourself on the same level, or at least
Hmm.
a step below, right? So that way you technically can't punch down. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that the more that you sort of put yourself forward as the person who is to be laughed at, and sort of, because they're paying to come and laugh at you. They're not paying to have an entire crowd of 100 or however many people will laugh at you. Um, I think that like that ultimately always keeps things more flowing, more natural, and generally, it makes for an environment that feels safer. I think the last thing you want to be feeling while you're in a comedy show is potentially at the danger of being genuinely ridiculed. Um,
And
that's
you're
not to
talking about
say, oh yes, sorry.
the audience. You're saying that the audience has maybe a fear of being put on the spot.
I think so. I mean, at the same time, though, don't sit in front row if
Right.
if you don't want to be, called on for crowd work. But
Hmm.
I think that I mean, like it can be done, and I think this maybe goes a bit back to the role of persona. Is that if you are doing a persona, it's a bit different because then they understand it's not you making fun of them. It is, you are
Hmm.
basically in character marking them. I think that there's one comedian, Carissa Hendricks. She sort of puts on this persona called Lucy Darling, and she's sort of this sort of flapper girl, sort of red hair, like very sort of quippy and like smart on it. And she does crowd work, and she's very quick to like sort of poke fun at people, but it's never feels mean because it's so like obviously not her. It's so obviously not Carissa. It is the character Lucy Darling.
All right. So how about cultural translation of comedy? So how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Hmm. Um, I think so. I've not a huge amount of experience necessarily with comedy in different cultures and languages, but I can relate this to dubbing because that is something that is very common and prevalent in my industry. And yeah, it's really, really hard to localize jokes. I think comedy is probably the hardest thing to dub of all because especially like with things like anime where you have a very different style of humor, much more heightened, much more exaggerated, to try and apply that then to a more Western audience can sometimes be tricky. And generally, it can really turn some people off. Some people are really turned off by this sort of high energy, kind of, always nearly shouting voice.
Hmm.
Um, but I find that Again, try to find a bit of that sincerity. I think, like, always sometimes the funniest moments are when you have this larger than life character that then completely drops it and just goes into normal conversation mode. But to bring it back to the dubbing and to the different cultures, I think it is a matter of also knowing your audience and knowing the crowd that you're appealing to. Um, I would say either don't try and adapt it if you know there isn't an audience or a market there for you, or be very clear in your marketing and how you market the material you're putting out.
All right. So, how does the silence when your joke doesn't land hurt? Physically, emotionally, morally, or spiritually?
Everywhere. I um I mean, it's a pain that I don't think any man can truly know until they have felt it themselves. But
Ah,
I guess it's there's kind of I was once told by a teacher of mine who taught clowning of being in the shit. Are we allowed to curse on
so
this
far, yeah. It's
podcast?
first
I think we can
15
bleep that
seconds. YouTube does this AI thing. So, other than that, it's good to go.
Okay, well, we can just dismiss it. So yeah, it's called being in the shit, where you bomb on stage, you're stuck there, deer in the headlights. What do you do?
Hmm.
And he was all about encouraging you to go into that space, where you have no idea what to do next, where you have no idea what is going to come, because then you are forced to be genuine. You are forced to be authentic because your material has flopped.
Hmm.
Everything that you have prepared and worked for years to achieve has gone down the gutter. You got to make something new on the spot. And I think generally audiences will receive that more if you genuinely try, and if you acknowledge that you are in the shit, if you acknowledge that that didn't work, and then just give the next thing that's on your mind. I guarantee that, like, that is like how I say 95% of my jokes.
Interesting. So you're saying that working on, I mean, you try and get into that space. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't intentionally bomb my jokes, obviously, but
Okay.
it's more like I think why improv is especially becoming a much more favored medium in recent years, especially on social media, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels. People love seeing improv, and I think it's because you are getting people kind of stuck in that place, and then watching them in real time adapt, and watching them, uh, have to come to this realization that they need to make material right now and right here.
Mhm. So then are comics more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
I mean, I suppose it depends on how you would define both.
Hmm.
I think if you're going with a comic as a person who is like your traditional kind of stand-up comedian, someone who tells jokes, and like it's sort of like almost that rapid fire wit, maybe. But also I think again, to say that there are only two categories and one is more universal than the other, I think is limiting um what is possible. I think because there's so many different ways to tell a joke, there's so many different ways to put forward your routine. I mean, like, for example, like Weird Al, he does his comedy through song, and that's not necessarily, I wouldn't say that's necessarily more or less universal. I think
Hmm.
that's more just, it's just appealing to a different demographic.
All right. So how about crowd work versus crafted work? So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
Hmm. I mean, the sweet spot ideally would be in the middle, but I mean, going back to what I said like 5 seconds ago, with improv being more
Mm-hmm.
prevalent on social media in the last few years. Same thing with crowd work. You're always seeing these shorts and these clips of comedians doing crowd work, um, and again, I think it's because audiences love to see that genuine attempt to escape the shit. Um, I think that there's also it's weird because in a way, crowd work is more comfortable, I find, than prepared material because you have that kind of that buy-in from the audience, knowing that this isn't something that you planned. This is just something that you're going off the top of your head with. At the same time, of course, that can be very, very scary because you're going off the top of your head.
Right.
But I don't know. Weirdly, I find rehearsed material a lot more nerve-wracking to put up because it is something that you have invested time and effort into. It is something that you have really, really carefully thought about. And if that doesn't work, then that is just the worst feeling because it's all of that time and effort spent kind of going down the drain.
All right. So, very important question:
Mm-hmm.
advertising and self promotion. Who
Mm-hmm.
advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
The magician.
Mm.
Please, may you elaborate on the magician aspect?
I mean, do you see advertising for magicians?
As in a literal magician. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I have, but then again, maybe I'm not too in touch with the magic scheme. I don't know. And it's funny actually because I think that going back to Carissa Hendricks, she is all three of those because she is also literally a comic magician. Um,
Okay.
and with advertising, like I said, I don't think there's necessarily one that does more than the other. I don't think that if this is a case of X does this and Y does that. I think this is always at its core about the audience and about who you're appealing to. And I mean, what I've seen with, you know, um, socials is that is generally the new place to advertise. You don't see necessarily posters and marquees and billboards anymore. It's usually more through word of mouth and trending. And I mean, I think that's great because I think that getting a vibe of a comedian is more accessible than it's ever been before.
Mm-hmm.
There's always kind of that risk of like, oh, I don't like this guy. I saw like a poster, they looked funny, but I'm not enjoying his set. But you can now so easily just go onto their social medias and look at clips of them doing crowd work or doing a set and think whether or not that is for you. I think that's great for comedians as well because it means that you've got a lot more initial buy-in from your audience and you're much likely to have a good set because your audience is more likely to have known what you do and enjoy your stuff.
All right. So, how about censorship and offense? So, does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
Hmm. I mean, I think there's a comic cord. I yeah, I don't say that in regards of offense and in regards of lines to be drawn. I kind of feel like there's a lot of attention put on subject matter in sort of comedy. You can't joke about X, you can't joke about Y. These things are too serious to be joked about. And I think we're looking in the wrong place with this. I think that anything can technically be joked about, but I think that something shouldn't be joked about. Like it's kind of a just because you can doesn't mean you should kind of situation where the actual content of what you're saying is like less than 10% of the actual joke. It's in the pace, the delivery, the timing, the crowd, the context. And if you haven't got those things lined up really, really carefully, it can really, really turn off a crowd, and so I don't know. That I think offensive humor can be really good. Like that, like it can absolutely be hilarious. But I think that it's very, very hard to produce. And
Mhm.
so I think, yeah, ultimately, I'd say the if I had to pick one or the other, I would say probably the comic would lead more towards that.
Okay. So then who survives better in a cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the
Hmm.
magician, or the mudslinger?
The mudslinger, as in, could you please explain the
The guy
mudslinger?
at the guy at the execution throwing the tomatoes?
Okay, okay. Well, my mind would initially jump to mudslinger. He's slinging that mud. He's already sort of putting, um, it's almost in a way it's kind of can deflect the onus onto someone else, which can I don't know, that's sort of classic politician move, really, in a way. But I'm not sure who would survive better. Maybe, uh, I don't know. With cancel culture and with sort of these kinds of audiences, it is entirely dependent on context. It is
Hmm.
entirely dependent on what someone has done, whether it is, and the question of whether or not it was right or wrong to cancel them is a whole other story. But I think there are definitely some things that certain comedians and celebrities and politicians and so on have done that are deplorable and do need to be cancelled. And there are some things that perhaps have been blown out of proportion. And I don't think necessarily that the brand of humor that you do, obviously, of course, someone like Dave Chappelle is more likely to get cancelled than, I don't know, say, you know, um, I don't know, Carissa Hendricks. But uh, even still, I think that you cancel culture will come for all, and it's really like it's something you have to kind of learn to adapt with and move with. And generally, I mean, the easiest way to avoid it is just be a nice person, be a good person, and generally you don't get cancelled. So
All right.
yeah.
So how about laughter versus applause? So are comics chasing laughs and comedians chasing applause breaks or primetime Emmy that validate the message?
Hmm. I think when I applaud at a comedy show, to me that is a intellectual sort of acknowledgement of the joke, right? Like, it's kind of like saying I thought that was funny. It was like a nose exhale, but louder. you know um Whereas a laugh is such an instinctual gut reaction, right? Like, you are literally like I mean, it's literally like a fear response. It's your human body reacting to something surprising and
Right.
not knowing how to cope. And so I would much rather have that instinctual reaction to my work. I'd much rather have someone not know what to do with themselves and suddenly, burst into stitches than someone go, ha ha ha, yes, I thought that was very humorous. like, but yeah, I think applause is nice and it's good. And especially if there is like a message that's being conveyed through that, and like that sort of acknowledgement, and that like the audience agreeing with you is great. But ultimately, I think as a comic, primary role is to make people laugh. And so, yeah, if people are laughing, then the show's going good.
All right. So Louis, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Oh my goodness. Oh, am I ever? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Hmm. I would probably call myself a Foley artist, and maybe it's because I'm biased because I do Foley work as well. But
Okay.
I think that I think that I would want to bring forward something that has clarity and sort of precision, and I like it when humor feels slick, when it feels like you as an audience member are kind of being strung along for a ride. And I think that like the sort of the Foley artist is in a way responsible for a lot of that, because they are one who would manipulate your ears into making what you see feel more impactful and feel more big or grand or cute or whatever you're going for. So yeah, I would say that.
All right. So then does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Hmm. Well, it's funny because prop comedy I feel is actually making a bit of a return. I'm seeing a lot of comedians who are starting to use either props or like sound effects. There's one person on YouTube that I cannot remember the name of, but his whole set, his whole shtick is having a sound guy behind him, basically just playing as many just wacky sound effects as possible, to sort of trip him up, and it's very funny. Um, but I think that I'm sorry, could you remind me of a question?
Yeah.
I've gone on my own
Does
rambling now.
does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's
Mhm.
orchestrated sonically?
Yes, so I'd say that the example I just gave would be an example of vivid comedy, right?
Hmm.
It's in your face, it's visceral, it's they're grabbing you by the neck and showing you the funnies. Whereas Sonic, I think, is much more I feel like that lie much more in sort of quippy humor, something a bit more witty, something maybe that's got more kind of um, sort of an intellectual response behind it.
Okay.
Um, I don't think that as comedic mediums, personally, personally, I prefer doing something that's a bit um, more visceral. I like doing things that make the audience go, "What?" you know. But yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So, here on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the
Mhm.
next guest. And the previous guest was Tommy
Oh,
Savitt.
okay.
And his question for you, Louis,
Hmm.
is if you weren't doing
Hmm.
comedy because you were in Afghanistan, what would you pursue instead as a passion?
Probably music. I mean, I love producing and creating music. I like to play instruments. I think that like I feel like 'cause I had quite a musical background because I went to a sort of quite a posh music school. And so I've kind of had that in my bones, really. Um, yeah, I think I would probably just spend most of my days just noodling on the guitar.
All right, very cool. All right, last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Could you clarify what the type five would mean?
Oh, just doing like a short set, like you're at comedy club
Right,
and it's
right. Yes. Right, yes, yes. Okay. Um, hmm. I think personally that I think we're in an age where we are leaning more towards short form content. I think with the rise of YouTube Shorts and Reels and TikTok, you kind of our attention spans are getting shorter, and our desire for like sort of quick laughs is getting stronger. So I think in terms of the eye of the general public, I think Type Fives is going to be is in just quick 1-2 punches kind of comedy is probably going to become more popular, I believe. However, there's a beauty to long sets, really being strung along with a story and then having it all come back together. My personal favorite type, but also I think um, it's going to be like I think that yeah, for a Gen Z audience, it would be much more suited to short form.
so you don't like the Netflix specials when they're going for 45 minutes?
I mean, it depends on the comedian, really.
Of course, of
I think I
course.
could, I could listen to some people for hours. Some I wish I could have turned off sooner.
Right. Well, Louis, thank you so much for being my guest. Where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on my Instagram at Louis Critchley Official. I also have a TikTok, which is Louis Critchley, believe it or not. And yeah, um, just give me a Google, and I'll probably show up somewhere.
Awesome. Well, Louis, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard.